Coming up next, the story of one of the most influential singer-songwriters of the rock era. Ironically, she despised her own voice. And when she started composing songs without her famous husband, she doubted that anybody would even care. It actually took the friendship of another emerging superstar of the singer-songwriter world to encourage her to open for him at an iconic nightclub in West Hollywood. Now, during her set, literally shaking from nervousness, she sang a song that mesmerized her friend. He was watching from the club balcony. So enchanted by her performance, he felt compelled to record the song that he heard for his upcoming album. Little did he know that she had written the song as a response to his first big hit. That'll come later. To her surprise, this cover of her song became a #1 smash. Let's relive the heartwarming classic and the musical icons that brought it to life, coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you remember jamming out to Schoolhouse Rock on Saturday mornings as a kid, you're gonna dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now, click the big red button, click the bell so you always know when our stuff comes out. Also, check us out on Patreon. You know, it's incredible to me that some artists don't hear their own genius. Take today's featured artist, well, one of them. She hated her own voice and thought no one would care for her music when she started writing on her own for her career. And in the end, she's become one of the most beloved artists ever. And today's featured song is a great example of that. One that her friend made a massive hit in 1971. But You've Got a Friend, written by incredible Carole King, was first recorded by her for her landmark second studio album, Tapestry, in 1971. The song became a pop music standard, of course, when James Taylor released his version as a single from his album Mudslide Slim and the Blue Horizon. Taylor's rendition was a universal smash, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, #2 in Canada, and #4 on the UK singles chart. Now, both versions were recorded simultaneously in 1971, featuring some of the most sought-after studio musicians in the industry at the time.
You've got a friend. Got a friend.
That evening became one of those magical moments in rock history, elevating two artists to legendary status and really transforming a song that almost didn't get written into a timeless classic. Everybody knows You've Got a Friend. There were two key meetings before Carole King and James Taylor showcased their brilliance on You've Got a Friend. The first one took place in New York in 1967 at the Night Owl Cafe. At the time, James Taylor was playing with a band that had originally been called the King Bees, later became the Flying Machine. The group included the great Danny Kortchmar, Cooch, Zach Wisner, and Joel Bishop O'Brien. Some friends of Carol's brought her to the Night Owl to see James and his band perform. Carole met James briefly backstage. When she walked in, Danny called out, "James, come over here and meet Carole." Now, although Carole had never met Danny before, they all got along well as fellow musicians. James, with his long and lanky frame, ambled over and said, "How are you?" before just walking away without another word. It was actually a weird experience, Carole recalled. She considered leaving, but her friends insisted she stay and watch him perform. She was blown away. "What you see today was all there back then," is what Carole would say. She didn't stay for the after-show meeting as she had small children waiting for her at home. Now, the second meeting between Carole and JT was a few years later in 1969 at Peter Asher's house. Now, by then, Peter was James' close confidant and producer. It was no secret that James had issues with heroin. He was addicted when Carole first met him. But by the second meeting, he'd cleaned up and he was ready to work with Peter on an album. When Carole walked into Peter's house, she saw James sitting at the piano, just absorbed in his music. He looked up and saw Danny, his old friend, and they embraced. Then they reintroduced him to Carole, and this time he was fully present, sober. The two of them sat down to play, and Peter just said, "Why don't you guys just play?" They started to do that, and Carole remembers fondly that their sound and their relationship hasn't changed from all the way back then. Carole compared it to being like two puppies rolling around. The music, it was just flowing, and it was in and out of each other. James' guitar, Carol's piano just blended seamlessly, and it felt like they'd known each other forever.
And you know, wherever I am.
When Carole King and her collaborator husband Jerry Goffin officially divorced, both professionally and personally, in 1969, the public had been enjoying her music through the voices of numerous artists who had recorded their co-written songs. Probably the greatest husband-wife songwriting team ever. However, despite her significant contributions to the music industry, Carole King's name was not widely recognized by the general public then. Determined to establish herself as a solo artist, she released her debut solo album, but its lack of commercial success left her feeling very disheartened, questioning the value of her career altogether and fearing that people just didn't care. Now, James Taylor made it into Carol's circle of trust, and even though she was painfully shy and did not like her singing voice, James insisted that she continue to record and perform her own music. Big thing there. James not only had faith in her, but he saw greatness in her as a solo performer. Carole didn't know she had it.
I used to feel uninspired.
Then came the making of Tapestry, Carol's second album that would connect with people in a deeply personal way, something you just can never predict. The resonance of that record was historic. Although she didn't release it as a single, Carol's composition of You Got a Friend, that was an album cut on Tapestry that proved to be a centerpiece for Carol's monumental breakout.
I'll come running, yeah.
The enduring chemistry of Tapestry reveals that Carole King did not dwell on bitterness over her initial public snubbing of her solo career. Instead, compassion and empathy defined her approach, exemplified by You Got a Friend, of course. Carole penned this song in response to James Taylor's poignant lyrics from his hit Fire and Rain, particularly the line, I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend. This one struck her deeply. Carole described the song's creation as achieving close to pure inspiration, embodying one of the purest and most selfless sentiments in music history.
I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend.
So sitting at the piano without a clear plan, Carole improvised. Without her usual tape recorder handy, she worried she might forget the words that were flowing through her. Riffing off this inspiration, from Fire and Rain, the lyrics for You've Got a Friend came to Carole in a steady rush of expressiveness.
Yeah, to see you again.
Songwriting, it just came naturally to Carole, but she discovered her talent while striving to fit in at school, actually. Carole's academic skills were advanced, leading her to skip a grade from kindergarten to second grade, making her significantly younger and smaller than her classmates. Despite these challenges, though, Carole was well-liked for being cute and personable, though not in a romantically appealing way, as she would describe it. She longed to be popular in a different sense, but struggled to find her niche until she learned of the James Madison High School Sing. There she found solace in playing piano and teaching her friends songs. This made her feel accepted and comfortable, even though she still didn't fit the traditional image of popularity. Carole realized that through music, she could be liked for what she really was, which brought her happiness and a deep immersion into songwriting.
Might as well rain until September.
Let's talk about songwriting for a bit, particularly the use of the negative inflection ain't that Carole wrote in her touching composition. Carole came up with an iconic line when she wrote Ain't It Good to Know You Got a Friend, which, if grammatically correct, should have been written Isn't It Good to Know You've Got a Friend? But who's going to be foolish enough to tell Carole King, a master lyricist, how to write a proper literary line for her song? In the context of the style the song was written in, ain't flows much better than isn't it. It's easier to sing with one less syllable, of course, and ain't is used in rock songs all the time. I think many of you will relate to this. In the scholastic world, certain words are typically avoided in speech or writing because they're considered incorrect, right? Or unpolished. I bring this up because my first grade teacher would get really upset if any of us used ain't. She would single out the student who said it and react with a stern cautionary look that was both embarrassing and intimidating. She'd look straight at that person and gruffly say, "Ain't fell into a bucket of paint." And, although my teacher's intentions were well-meaning, it's a fact that ain't can be found in the dictionary and has a rich history dating back to the English Restoration in the late 17th century. Look it up. First appeared in the American Heritage Dictionary in 1778. I think we all remember the old elementary school poem, ain't a word and you ain't supposed to say it. Say ain't 5 times, you ain't going to heaven.
Hey, ain't it good to know that you've got...
One of the challenges that initially held Carol back as a solo performer was her crippling shyness to sing in front of people. Carol was very self-conscious and never confident in her ability to sing, as I've talked about. She just didn't like the way she sounded. I think a lot of us are that way. Carol was also under personal strain on the heels of a difficult divorce, uprooting her family with 2 young daughters and making the life-changing move across the country from New York City to LA. Once again, James Taylor was instrumental in convincing her to push ahead and not allow her shyness to be a stumbling block for what he believed could be a promising solo career. So reluctantly, she agreed to open for him at a pivotal show at the famed Troubadour in West Hollywood. The Troubadour, of course, an important stepping stone for young artists to land a record deal back in the day, or connect with other musicians and major influencers in the music industry. As her opening number, Carol actually chose You've Got a Friend. Now, watching her performance from the balcony of the club, James Taylor was instantly captivated by the song. He was crazy about it. He loved it. Upon hearing Carol singing and playing You Got a Friend, James immediately grasped the guitar chords and the transitions in his head, in his mind. When it came time to record the song, James recalled that there was no need for experimentation at all. The final version matched exactly how he envisioned it from the start when he heard it on the balcony. Like Carol, James Taylor possessed a pure musical style that gave his music sweet, genuine authenticity. The song's themes of boundless friendship and unwavering support resonated universally.
Yeah, now you've got a friend.
For JT, the lyrics held personal significance, especially given the depression that he'd recently overcome when he first heard Carol perform the song. He was coming out of a bad bout. That's where Fire and Rain came from. This song seemed to speak directly to him and address the emotional pain that he had endured. It was perfect for JT's style and the musical language that he so brilliantly communicated. The arrangement of You've Got a Friend transitions between major and minor keys, lending the song a compassionate quality that is a comforting force to counteract the difficulties of everyday life.
You've got a friend.
Now, shortly after that momentous night at the Troubadour, James was in the A&M studios on La Brea Avenue in LA with Peter Asher, Danny Korchmar, Leland Sklar, and Russ Kunkel to record his 3rd studio album, Mudslide Slim and the Blue Horizon. Now, on that particular day, they had recorded 2 songs, and they were unsure of what to record next. On a whim, Peter suggested that they take a crack at You've Got a Friend, knowing that James, he had a passion for that song. James articulated how he thought the song could be translated from the piano, as Carol had written it, to an acoustic style that he envisioned while being mesmerized during her performance at the Troubadour. Everyone understood exactly what James wanted. They were to capture the song as if you were listening to James and the band performing it in someone's living room. A very intimate one-on-one recording. Just before finishing the song, the crew found out that their friend Joni Mitchell was working in the same studio, so they actually invited her to perform a parallel 5th harmony, which really framed the sincerity of the final chorus perfectly.
And you know wherever I am.
When the Mudslide Slim album was completed, Carol, fresh off finishing Tapestry, visited James Taylor and his band to check on their progress. Upon her arrival at the studio, Peter Asher greeted her and said, "Carol, we got something to play for you." He then played James Taylor's acoustic guitar rendition of You Got a Friend. Carol listened attentively. Her eyes welled up with tears. She just thought it was beautiful. There are some differences in the lyrics between King and Taylor's versions, mainly slight variations, really. The most notable difference is in the opening lines. Sourcing her original lyric, Carol sings, "When you're down and troubled and you need some love and care."
And you need some love and care.
For James' version, he altered that line to "when you're down in trouble and you need a helping hand."
And you need a helping hand.
James Taylor's version of "You Got a Friend" was recorded first. Actually, Carole King's version was actually first to be released to the public as a track on Tapestry. Although both versions have that mellow vibe, they do have distinctions. Carole King's gentle vocal delivery instills her rendition of the song with a sincere shyness, adding a charming and affectionate quality that evokes a desire to return the favor. Her plea to call out my name and the promise to come running, it creates a heartfelt connection, right? Inviting listeners to reassure her that she can also rely on them. It's a two-way relationship between singer and listener. I have to be honest, I feel that way when I listen to a lot of Carole King's songs. I'm not sure how to explain it, really. Maybe it's because I feel for the pain that she endured during her breakup with Jerry Goffin, or that she has had so many heartbreaking relationships throughout her life that she had to deal with. I just think that a person with such a beautiful soul like Carole King deserves so much better. I just gotta say that Carole King has an uncanny way of comforting her listeners. Her music, her voice, it's just, I don't know how to describe it. It's just so mesmerizing and comforting, and it just soothes the soul.
Wish I could, but you are so far away.
Carole's version maintains a disciplined arrangement where each instrument plays its designated role very well in creating a cohesive whole. Alongside Carole King's piano, the ensemble features Charlie Larky's bass, which mirrors King's piano's lower register, right? Complemented by the subtle textures of bowed violins and violas. Danny Korchmar adds depth with congas, just like he does on JT's version, while James Taylor's acoustic guitar provides a gentle, supportive accompaniment. It was an earnest, collaborative effort by a talented group of close friends that truly cared about each other's music. There was such a community there.
And I'll be there, yes I will.
James Taylor's recording of "You Got a Friend" sounded fantastic, but Taylor didn't want to overshadow Carole with her own song. So Asher, recognizing its big hit potential, he reached out to Carole with a bold request to let James Taylor release his version as the lead single for Mudslide Slim and the Blue Horizon. Carole King graciously agreed, and James' version quickly flew to the top of the Billboard Hot 100. Surprisingly, it would be James Taylor's lone #1 over his illustrious career. That's hard to imagine. His rendition of "You Got a Friend" also won the 1971 Grammy Award for Best Male Pop Vocal Performance and the Grammy for Song of the Year, with the honor bestowed on Carole for being the song's composer. So get this achievement made Carole King the first woman to win the Grammy Grand Slam, earning Record of the Year for "It's Too Late," also Album of the Year and Best Female Pop Vocal Performance, both for Tapestry and Song of the Year. I mean, insanely great for an artist who didn't think anyone would even care and didn't like her own voice. So at the end of the year, she had two of the biggest hits of 1971, one of the best years ever. "It's Too Late" and James Taylor's version of her song.
And it's too late, baby, now it's too late.
James's version also proved advantageous for Carole as well. The song became a cornerstone of her Tapestry album. Although she never released her version as a single, it further established Carole's relevance as a solo artist and her importance as one of the most influential songwriters of the rock era. Now, Tapestry sold over 10 million copies in the US alone and over 25 million worldwide, one of the biggest albums ever. I've mentioned this feat on several episodes of Professor of Rock, but it still boggles the mind. Tapestry was #1 on the Billboard album chart for 15 weeks. And on that same chart for more than 6 consecutive years after its release. By the time JT's seminal version of "You Got a Friend" hit the #1 position on the Billboard Hot 100, Tapestry had already been at the top of the album chart for 6 weeks. I mean, that's phenomenal.
I feel the earth move under my feet. I feel the sky.
Over the years, "You Got a Friend" has been covered by many notable artists. There's Dusty Springfield, Anne Murray, Celine Dion, Donny Hathaway, Michael Jackson, and Aretha Franklin. But let's be honest, the definitive version of You Got a Friend, it's kind of a tie for me between James Taylor's version and Carole King's. In 2001, the rendition by James Taylor was inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. The following year, the original version by Carole King was inducted into the same Hall of Fame. It was only right that both versions should be enshrined into preeminence.
Well, then now don't you let them.
James Taylor and Carole King performed You've Got a Friend together during their 2010 Troubadour reunion tour. And then in 2015, James Taylor delivered an inspired performance, a solo acoustic performance of the song at Hotel de Ville in Paris in tribute to the victims of the January 2015 Ile-de-France attacks. Apparently, the Secretary of State at the time, John Kerry, had come to Paris. He and James Taylor were having dinner together. And during the meal, the Secretary asked him, I'm giving a speech with the mayor tomorrow. Will you sing You've Got a Friend? So it was arranged on the spot. But when the time came for JT to perform, he stood up to sing, but the direct input plug for his guitar wasn't working. So the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, came over to where James was on stage, held her microphone in front of his guitar, and he played it. It was really cool.
You just call out my name.
Then in 2021, Carole triumphantly performed the song during the ceremony when she was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It was a very cool moment, validating moment for sure.
You've got a friend.
For the once shy little girl who started writing songs to gain the approval of her teenage peers at James Madison High School in Brooklyn, New York. Of course, unsure of her voice then. It's become a national treasure.
Oh yeah, you've got a friend.
Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about Carole King and James Taylor, You've Got a Friend, one of the most comforting songs ever. What are your memories of the song? What are your thoughts on both renditions? What's your favorite version? Let's have a great discussion about one of the great songs of the 70s. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We would love to have you as part of our community. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.